Something about the atmosphere over the next 48 hours deserves your full attention, because the closer this moment arrives, the harder it becomes to ignore the unmistakable sense that something enormous is reaching its breaking point. This is not the kind of energy that quietly slips into the background while life continues as usual. It carries the feeling of standing at the threshold of a door that has been slowly unlocking for weeks, even if you could not yet see what was waiting on the other side. Tonight, the moon enters Aquarius. By itself, that movement might appear routine to anyone casually following the lunar cycle. Yet this is anything but an ordinary passage through the Zodiac. When the entire celestial picture is examined together, this transition becomes part of one of the most remarkable energetic turning points of this year, and perhaps one of the defining astrological moments of this decade. That is not an attempt to exaggerate the importance of the event. It is the conclusion that emerges when every planetary position, every angle, and every layer of the current sky is viewed as one interconnected design. The astronomical relationships themselves support the magnitude of what is unfolding. What has held my attention more than anything else is that three particular zodiac signs are approaching an experience that feels impossible to dismiss once it arrives. I'm not referring to a passing intuition or a subtle emotional impression that could easily be overlooked. I am speaking about information that arrives without warning, something unmistakably real, something that interrupts the direction you believed your life was taking and forces an immediate re-evaluation of everything ahead. Later, I will explain exactly which three signs are standing at the center of this unfolding story and why they are uniquely positioned for such a dramatic revelation. Before we reach that point, however, it is essential to understand the larger energetic landscape that has been quietly developing behind the scenes. Without that foundation, the intensity of what is about to happen cannot be fully appreciated. If the past week has left you feeling strangely unsettled, if your emotions have seemed unusually unpredictable, if your thoughts have refused to settle, or if you have carried the persistent sensation that you are standing on the edge of something enormous that remains just outside your field of vision, there is a precise astrological explanation for those feelings. Your experience has not been imaginary. Your inner world has been responding to a sequence of powerful planetary movements that have steadily increased the pressure throughout the entire month. None of this suddenly appeared today. The momentum began building at the very beginning of July, and every major transit since then has added another layer to the emotional and psychological intensity. Earlier in the month, Mars collided with Uranus in Gemini, releasing explosive and disruptive energy directly into the realms of communication, mental processing, everyday routines, and the nervous system itself. Many people experienced sudden interruptions, unexpected conversations, rapid changes of direction, or a constant feeling that life refused to remain predictable. Soon afterward, Neptune stationed retrograde in Aries, beginning a profound process of dissolving illusions surrounding personal identity and exposing the distance between who people believed themselves to be and what they genuinely desired. Then Mercury finally turned direct only a few days ago after weeks of retrograde motion that had surrounded countless people with emotional uncertainty, mental confusion, and difficulty finding clarity. As if that were not enough. Yesterday, Saturn also stationed retrograde in Aries, demanding an uncompromising internal examination of personal authority, healthy boundaries, responsibility, and the ways each individual has either surrendered or protected their own power. Every one of these transits has functioned like another turn of the pressure valve. The emotional tension has accumulated day after day, layer upon layer, preparing for a release that arrives now. At exactly 9:40 at night on July 28th, the moon crosses into Aquarius. From that precise instant, it immediately begins moving toward a conjunction with Pluto, the planet associated with irreversible transformation, profound psychological excavation, and the endings that inevitably create entirely new beginnings. The following morning, on July 29th at 10:30, the Moon reaches 6 degrees and 29 minutes of Aquarius, creating an exact full moon directly opposite both the Sun and Jupiter in Leo. Yet even that description captures only part of the story. This full moon exists within an exceptionally rare planetary arrangement that many astrologers recognize as Barbo's basket. This extraordinary geometric formation is created by Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, each positioned at approximately 4 to 6 degrees within their respective signs simultaneously. Alignments of this nature appear only on very rare occasions. They belong to a category of celestial architecture that most astrologers may witness only once during an entire generation. When I first plotted every planetary position and recognized how perfectly this pattern was assembling, it demanded my complete attention because the symmetry was impossible to ignore. There is another reason this period deserves to be taken seriously. The phrase timeline shift has become increasingly common in spiritual conversations, often repeated so frequently that many people dismiss it before considering what it truly means. That skepticism is understandable. However, this particular moment offers a far more substantial foundation than simple speculation. Right now, 4 of the slowest moving planets in our solar system, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are all linked through harmonious aspects that include trines and sextiles, creating an unusually supportive geometric network across the sky. Anchoring the entire configuration is the powerful opposition between Jupiter in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius, serving as the central axis that stabilizes every surrounding connection. The renowned French astrologer André Barbault devoted much of his life's work to studying precisely these outer planetary configurations. Throughout decades of research, he observed how similar patterns repeatedly coincided with pivotal historical transitions, including wars, revolutions, economic crises, and equally significant eras marked by extraordinary human advancement. According to Barbault, harmonious outer planetary relationships like the ones forming now did not symbolize collapse. Instead, they represented the possibility of rebuilding, renewal, and the relaunch of civilization itself through constructive evolution rather than destruction. Looking back helps place the present into clearer perspective. The last major interaction between Uranus and Pluto occurred from 2012 through 2015, when those planets formed intense square aspects. The atmosphere during those years was defined by widespread protests, escalating political division, and institutions struggling under immense pressure. Those squares reflected conflict, confrontation, and the dismantling of outdated systems. The current trine represents an entirely different chapter of the same evolutionary cycle. The revolutionary force, originally awakened during the Uranus and Pluto conjunction of the 1960s, then challenged through the turbulent squares of the early 2010s, is now reaching a stage where integration becomes possible. Rather than generating another wave of pure disruption, the present alignment offers an opportunity for those transformative forces to organize into something lasting and constructive. The full moon, on July 29th, becomes the moment that illuminates this entire celestial framework, activating every interconnected piece of the larger pattern and preparing the stage for what comes next. The moment I want you to prepare yourself for is not simply another emotional shift. It is the instant when everything that has been quietly assembling beneath the surface finally becomes operational. When I speak about a timeline shift, I'm not referring to an abstract spiritual slogan or a phrase designed to create excitement. I am describing a point at which the framework for an entirely new direction has already been constructed. The foundation has been laid, every supporting beam has found its place, and the cosmic structure is complete. What remains is the spark that brings the entire design to life. This lunar event becomes that spark. It functions as the emotional current that energizes everything built throughout the past several weeks. That conclusion is not rooted in wishful thinking. It comes directly from the planetary geometry unfolding overhead, And whether you consciously follow astrology or not, your emotional body is likely to recognize its influence. Tonight, as the moon leaves Capricorn and enters Aquarius, something within your own internal landscape begins to reorganize. Before that transition takes place, it is important to understand the emotional environment you have been living inside. At this very moment, while the moon is still traveling through Capricorn, the atmosphere carries the unmistakable weight of responsibility, discipline, and endurance. Capricorn rarely invites emotional release. Instead, it encourages persistence, asking you to continue carrying obligations even when they have become exhausting. If recent days have felt unusually heavy, if you have struggled to explain why every responsibility seems to demand more energy than usual, or if your emotions have felt compressed beneath responsibilities that never seem to end, there is an astrological reason behind that experience. Capricorn has been encouraging you to keep moving, to remain productive, and to suppress anything that threatens the appearance of control. Many people have mistaken this pressure for personal weakness, when in reality, they have simply been responding to the energetic climate surrounding them. The moment the moon crosses into Aquarius tonight, that pressure begins to dissolve, yet it does not disappear gradually. The change is immediate, almost startling, like leaving a dimly lit room where your eyes had slowly adjusted to darkness and stepping directly into brilliant sunlight that forces you to see everything differently. Your emotional awareness shifts dramatically. Instead of processing every situation from a deeply personal perspective, you suddenly gain distance. It becomes possible to observe your own life, almost as though you were looking down from above, noticing connections and patterns that previously remained hidden because you were standing too close to them. That distance becomes one of the greatest gifts this Aquarius moon offers. Relationships begin revealing their true dynamics. Professional situations expose recurring cycles. Habits that once felt normal suddenly appear unnecessary or limiting. You recognize where your energy has been invested without receiving anything meaningful in return. You recognize where you have compromised your own authority. You recognize where fear has quietly convinced you to settle for less than your authentic potential. Yet this remarkable clarity also carries its own challenge. Aquarius naturally encourages decisive action, and because Pluto is waiting nearby, every realization becomes emotionally amplified. The temptation to respond immediately may become overwhelming. You may suddenly feel compelled to end a relationship, send a long overdue message, walk away from an unhealthy situation, or make a dramatic declaration that permanently changes your circumstances. Those impulses may feel completely justified because the truth you are seeing appears undeniable. Even so, this is the moment to create space between realization and action. Observe every insight carefully. Record your thoughts if necessary. Allow yourself to experience the emotional intensity without immediately translating it into irreversible decisions. There is an important reason for exercising patience, and it becomes clearer as the larger astrological picture unfolds. On July 29th, when the full moon reaches 6 degrees and 29 minutes of Aquarius, it forms its exact conjunction with Pluto. This is where the emotional experience becomes far more profound than an ordinary full moon. Pluto never concerns itself with superficial adjustments. Its influence penetrates beneath appearances, beneath carefully constructed identities, and beneath every comforting illusion that has protected you from uncomfortable truths. Every full moon naturally illuminates what has remained hidden, bringing concealed realities into conscious awareness. When Pluto joins that process, illumination becomes excavation. Instead of merely revealing circumstances, it exposes the psychological foundation supporting those circumstances. It reveals the invisible power structures operating within relationships. It uncovers the compromises you have accepted simply to maintain peace or preserve belonging. It confronts the identities you have performed because they felt safer than expressing your genuine self. Under this full moon, An unmistakable feeling may begin rising from somewhere deep inside you. It may arrive without warning, yet it will carry extraordinary certainty. You may suddenly realize that you no longer possess the willingness to continue pretending. A quiet internal voice becomes impossible to ignore, as it declares that enough is enough. That realization may express itself through a difficult conversation with someone close to you. It may emerge as an undeniable understanding about circumstances that have kept you trapped for far too long. Or perhaps it manifests as an almost physical urgency to free yourself from something that has gradually become emotionally suffocating. Every individual experiences Pluto differently, yet its essential purpose remains constant. It removes what no longer reflects truth. The intensity of this particular full moon grows even stronger because approximately 2 hours before its exact culmination, the Sun forms a perfect conjunction with Jupiter at 6 degrees Leo and 24 minutes. Astrologers recognize this alignment as a Kazimi, a rare condition in which a planet occupies the very heart of the Sun. Jupiter symbolizes expansion, opportunity, abundance, confidence, and possibility. As these two bodies unite in Leo, they generate extraordinary creative vitality and encourage bold self-expression. Their message is unmistakable. They invite you to trust your gifts, recognize your value, embrace your brilliance, and believe that greater possibilities genuinely exist. At precisely the same time, directly across the Zodiac, the Moon and Pluto in Aquarius deliver a completely different challenge. Their message is equally powerful, yet far less comfortable. Before embracing expansion, they insist that every false identity be removed. Before stepping into greater visibility, they require absolute honesty. Before claiming your future, they demand that you stop performing roles designed only to satisfy other people. These opposing forces define the emotional atmosphere surrounding this entire period. One side encourages fearless confidence. The other insists upon uncompromising authenticity. Together, they create an internal experience that may feel as though two equally powerful currents are pulling your heart in opposite directions. If this week has already felt emotionally confusing, if part of you has wanted to leap boldly into something new, while another part has insisted that unresolved truths must first be confronted, then you have already begun experiencing the influence of this extraordinary alignment. There is one final consideration that deserves special attention, because it may become the greatest challenge hidden inside all of this remarkable potential. The conjunction between Jupiter and the Sun in Leo produces an extraordinary feeling of optimism. Confidence expands naturally. Possibilities seem limitless. The future appears filled with opportunity, and for many people it genuinely is. The sensation can resemble being handed an invitation that promises extraordinary rewards, making it tempting to believe that every instinct should be trusted without hesitation. That feeling is real, and its promise is significant, yet it also contains a subtle danger that cannot be ignored. A danger that becomes increasingly important as the next phase of this unfolding story begins. What makes this particular alignment so extraordinary is not simply the excitement it generates, but the incredible range of possibility it opens. From an astrological perspective, the union between the Sun and Jupiter represents one of the most uplifting and expansive influences you are likely to encounter for many years. It naturally awakens hope, strengthens confidence, and encourages you to believe that life can become much bigger than it has been. Yet while that brilliant energy radiates from Leo, another force is quietly observing from the opposite side of the Zodiac. Pluto is not impressed by enthusiasm alone. Pluto has only one question, and it is relentlessly uncompromising. Is the confidence you are building rooted in genuine truth, or is it resting on an illusion that simply feels convincing? This contrast creates one of the most fascinating psychological dynamics in astrology. Some astrologers have compared it to what they describe as the gambler's curse. The danger is not optimism itself. The danger appears when Jupiter magnifies your belief in yourself so dramatically that discernment begins to disappear. Confidence slowly transforms into certainty. Certainty becomes overconfidence, and suddenly you begin reaching beyond what your current foundation can actually support. You convince yourself that nothing can go wrong. You promise more than you are realistically prepared to deliver. You rush to launch an idea before it has matured. You commit to opportunities because they feel exciting, instead of because they are genuinely aligned with your deeper purpose. Then Pluto intervenes. It does not react emotionally or negotiate gently. It simply removes whatever lacks authenticity. Anything built upon ego instead of truth becomes unstable under Pluto's gaze. The illusion collapses, not as punishment, but as correction. That is why this moment asks for extraordinary honesty. Allow yourself to dream without limitation. If a calling has been quietly urging you toward a bold new direction, honor it. If your heart recognizes that it is time to step into something larger, do not automatically resist because of fear. At the same time, pause long enough to ask yourself whether the destination is genuinely yours. Make certain that your ambition is arising from authentic purpose rather than the desire to appear successful or powerful in someone else's eyes. This full moon possesses an uncanny ability to distinguish between those two motivations, and the difference will become unmistakably visible. Once that line is revealed, pretending not to see it will no longer be possible. Now let us turn toward the 3 zodiac signs standing closest to the center of this extraordinary activation, because each of them is preparing to receive a revelation capable of changing the course of what comes next. If your sun, moon, or rising sign belongs to one of these signs, pay especially close attention to the symbolism unfolding in your chart, because the coming days may carry messages that are impossible to ignore. Aquarius, your moment of reckoning has arrived. This full moon takes place directly within your first house, the area of the chart governing identity, personal expression, and the deepest understanding of who you are. It also forms a conjunction with Pluto, the very planet that has been methodically reshaping your identity ever since 2024. Whether you have consciously recognized it or not, you have already been undergoing an extraordinary internal transformation. The person you once identified as yourself has gradually been disappearing beneath layer after layer of profound change. Pluto never reshapes people through comfort. It dismantles outdated versions of identity piece by piece, stripping away everything that no longer reflects your authentic nature before inviting you to rebuild from a stronger foundation. Until now, much of that work has remained invisible, unfolding quietly beneath the surface of daily life. This full moon marks the point where those internal changes begin expressing themselves outwardly. What has been hidden becomes impossible for others, and even for you, to overlook. The revelation most likely reaches you through the realm of relationships. With the Sun and Jupiter illuminating your 7th house of partnerships, another person becomes the messenger carrying the truth you need to hear. That individual could be a romantic partner, a professional collaborator, or even someone you have viewed as an opponent. Their words or actions become the mirror, reflecting exactly where you have surrendered your own authority. Perhaps an unexpected confrontation exposes an imbalance you have tolerated for too long. Perhaps someone finally speaks a truth that has remained unspoken. Perhaps a relationship reaches its conclusion. Or perhaps, in a surprising twist, the message arrives through an extraordinary blessing. A proposal, a remarkable opportunity, or a partnership may emerge that recognizes your value more completely than anyone ever has before. Jupiter, traveling through the 7th house, often brings remarkable fortune through meaningful relationships. Regardless of the specific form this revelation takes, its deeper purpose remains the same. You are no longer meant to reduce your brilliance simply to preserve someone else's comfort. The version of yourself that willingly diminished its own light has completed its purpose. This full moon seals that chapter permanently and asks you to stand fully in the person you have become. Leo, your experience unfolds from the opposite side of this powerful axis, and the intensity surrounding you is impossible to ignore. The conjunction between the Sun and Jupiter is taking place within your first house, amplifying your visibility, confidence, creativity, and personal presence to extraordinary levels. You may notice that people are naturally drawn toward you. Opportunities appear with greater frequency. Doors that once remained closed suddenly begin opening. It may genuinely feel as though life is aligning in your favor. Yet, while all of that radiant momentum gathers within your own sign, the full moon joins Pluto directly across the sky, inside your seventh house of relationships and partnerships. Pluto functions here as a mirror, though not one designed to flatter the image you hope to see. Instead, it reflects reality with uncompromising precision. The message waiting for you arrives through another person, or through the collective environment surrounding you. Someone may challenge your authority in a way you never anticipated. A romantic partner may express truths that cannot be ignored. A professional relationship may reveal hidden dynamics that require immediate attention. Even your broader community, your audience, your colleagues, or the people you have been guiding could begin shifting their expectations in ways that force you to evolve alongside them. Uranus continues moving through your 11th house, signaling an ongoing restructuring of your social world, whether you actively choose it or not. Beneath this apparent tension lies an extraordinary opportunity. If you respond with openness instead of defensiveness, if you allow yourself to learn rather than protect your ego, you move into an entirely different expression of leadership. You stop leading because you seek admiration and begin leading because your authenticity inspires genuine transformation in others. That evolution represents the true invitation of this full moon, and every indication within this alignment suggests that you possess the capacity to embrace it. Gemini, your story may feel the most unpredictable of all because the changes unfolding within your chart are both rapid and deeply personal. Although the full moon itself does not occur in your sign, Uranus, the planetary ruler most closely associated with this lunation, continues traveling through the early degrees of Gemini within your first house. Throughout the month, Mars has also been moving through Gemini, adding tremendous momentum to an already electrified atmosphere. It is no surprise if your nervous system has felt overstimulated. Restlessness may have become your constant companion. You may have experienced an almost relentless desire for change without being able to identify exactly what needed to change. That sensation reflects Uranus performing its unmistakable work. It is rewiring your identity from the inside outward, and the process is still unfolding. The full moon now activates your 9th house, governing higher education, travel, philosophy, spiritual understanding, and the beliefs through which you interpret reality. Simultaneously, it opposes the Sun and Jupiter in your 3rd house, the realm connected with communication, daily experiences, and the internal narratives shaping your perception of life. This creates an extraordinary activation across the entire axis of the mind. For Gemini, the revelation is likely to arrive in the form of an unexpected download, and that description is intended almost literally. A sudden realization may appear without warning. An ordinary conversation could unexpectedly deliver the exact information that changes everything. A single insight may completely dismantle a belief you have carried for years. You could suddenly recognize that the educational path you have been following no longer reflects who you are becoming. You may discover that the story you have repeated about your own life has never been entirely true. An overwhelming desire to leave familiar surroundings and begin an entirely different chapter may arise with remarkable force. The most astonishing part of this experience is not simply the revelation itself, but the speed with which it transforms your perspective. One moment the world appears familiar, and the next, an entirely different reality begins unfolding before your eyes. There are moments in life when certainty dissolves almost instantly. One second you believe you completely understand your situation, and the next, a single realization rearranges everything you thought was true. That is the experience this full moon is creating for Gemini. The breakthrough does not arrive gradually or politely. It arrives all at once, replacing old certainty with a deeper truth that feels impossible to ignore. The shift taking place in your timeline asks you to respond differently than you usually would. Your natural instinct is to examine every possibility, weigh every outcome, and keep searching for one more piece of information before making a decision. Under this particular sky, however, that strategy may no longer serve you. The invitation is to trust the insight the moment it arrives. Instead of endlessly dissecting every detail, you're being encouraged to honor the clarity that suddenly appears, even if you cannot yet explain it logically. That may feel uncomfortable because it challenges one of your strongest habits, but this full moon is asking you to move before every answer has revealed itself. In many ways, your heart has already sensed that this moment was coming. Deep down, you have known that continuing to overanalyze would eventually become another way of standing still. And now the universe seems to be asking whether you are finally willing to exchange endless preparation for meaningful action. Before we move any further, though, there is something I want every single person to hear with complete attention, because this guidance applies regardless of your zodiac sign. The energetic atmosphere between tonight and July 30th carries tremendous intensity. During this period, you may feel powerful impulses rising unexpectedly. You might suddenly feel compelled to send a message you have been holding back for months. You may want to resign from your job without hesitation. You may feel convinced that a relationship has reached its end, that a friendship should be abandoned immediately, or that an enormous life decision simply cannot wait another moment. I want to encourage you to resist acting on those impulses the instant they appear. That does not mean the emotions themselves are false. In fact, they may be revealing something profoundly authentic. Pluto rarely exposes feelings that have no foundation in reality. When something rises to the surface under Pluto's influence, it usually deserves your attention. The challenge lies elsewhere. The combination of Aquarius detachment, Pluto's overwhelming emotional intensity, and Uranus bringing unpredictability creates an environment where temporary emotional acceleration can easily become permanent action. Decisions made during the highest emotional charge may still contain truth, but they may not yet contain wisdom. The astrological picture becomes even more sensitive, because on the very morning of the exact full moon, Venus in Virgo forms a challenging square with Mars in Gemini. This aspect often amplifies misunderstandings, sharp criticism, reactive communication, and disagreements that escalate far beyond their original importance. Small frustrations can rapidly transform into conflicts that permanently damage relationships, which otherwise might have been repaired. When this influence combines with everything else already unfolding, the possibility of destroying a bridge that still has value becomes significantly greater. That is why I encourage one simple practice throughout this window. Observe everything. Record everything. Wait before acting. If a powerful urge overwhelms you, allow yourself to express it completely on paper. Write without censoring yourself. Describe every frustration, every disappointment, every bold idea, every painful realization, and every dramatic plan exactly as it appears in your mind. Give those emotions a safe place to exist outside your nervous system. Then step away from what you have written. Return to it after 24 hours, once the emotional intensity has settled and your body has regained equilibrium. If those same conclusions still feel undeniably true after the full moon's strongest energy has passed, then move forward with confidence. Until then, allow yourself the gift of perspective. This approach is not about denying your emotions or pretending they do not matter. It is about making certain that your actions arise from enduring truth rather than temporary adrenaline. Looking beyond the individual zodiac signs, it is important to recognize that this full moon is activating every birth chart in some area of life. Whether your sun, moon, or rising belongs to Aquarius, Leo, Gemini, or another sign entirely, the larger message remains remarkably consistent. The lunar nodes are now shifting onto the Leo and Aquarius axis, marking a profound karmic redirection. During the previous cycle, much of humanity's collective lesson revolved around Virgo and Pisces themes, including service, sacrifice, healing, routine, and the often exhausting demands of everyday life. That chapter is gradually reaching its conclusion. A new cycle is beginning, and its focus is fundamentally different. The invitation now centers upon authentic self-expression, offered in service to the greater community. The question is no longer simply how you can work harder or give more of yourself. The question becomes how your unique gifts, your authentic voice, and your individual brilliance can contribute meaningfully to something larger than your personal story. This full moon represents the first major lunation to fully activate that new nodal axis. It illuminates the path ahead, revealing possibilities that previously remained hidden. Perhaps that explains why so many people have recently felt as though they were standing at an important crossroads. That sensation is not merely psychological. Symbolically, it reflects exactly where the collective journey now stands. The direction that once seemed obvious may no longer apply because the destination itself has changed. It is as though the internal navigation system guiding your life has suddenly recalculated, presenting a route that bears little resemblance to the one you originally expected to follow. Supporting this transition is the remarkable planetary geometry known as Barbeau's basket. Rather than suggesting instability, this rare configuration functions like an invisible framework supporting courageous change. It suggests that the necessary structure already exists beneath your feet. The safety net has been woven. The foundation is capable of supporting your next step. Yet no celestial alignment can take that step for you. Astrology can reveal opportunity, but only your own choices transform possibility into lived reality. As we approach the next 48 hours, there are a few final thoughts I hope remain with you. Tonight, as the moon enters Aquarius, pay close attention to your emotional landscape. The initial shift may arrive quietly. You may notice an unexpected sense of clarity. Situations that overwhelmed you only hours earlier may suddenly seem easier to observe with emotional distance. You may discover yourself detaching naturally from worries that previously consumed your attention. Those subtle changes mark the beginning of the energetic transition. By Wednesday morning, when the full moon reaches its exact peak, everything intensifies. What has remained hidden seeks visibility. What has been accumulating throughout the month reaches its point of release. For some individuals, especially those with Aquarius, Leo, or Gemini strongly emphasized in their charts, a message may arrive that permanently changes the direction of what comes next. That message could come through another person, through an unexpected conversation, or through an unmistakable realization emerging from deep within yourself. However it arrives, its meaning is unlikely to leave room for doubt. This is not an especially gentle period, and it would be misleading to pretend otherwise. The energy is powerful, emotionally charged, and capable of producing life-changing moments. Yet beneath all of that intensity lies something profoundly constructive. The planetary geometry surrounding this full moon does not primarily point toward destruction. It points toward breakthrough. It supports the kind of transformation that becomes possible only after you are willing to acknowledge reality exactly as it is, release what no longer belongs in your life, and trust that the person emerging beyond this threshold is worth every uncomfortable step required to become them. If any part of this speaks to something you have already been sensing, then perhaps you have been feeling this shift long before hearing these words. The restlessness, the quiet anticipation, the sense that something significant is preparing to either come together or finally fall away may not simply be anxiety. It may be your awareness, recognizing that you are standing before a doorway that has been forming throughout your entire journey. Walk through that doorway deliberately. Remain grounded inside your body. Give yourself space to breathe. Continue writing down your insights instead of reacting impulsively. Above all else, honor the 24-hour pause before making decisions that cannot easily be undone. That simple practice may become one of the most valuable gifts you give yourself during this remarkable astrological window. Thank you for spending this time here with me. Your willingness to stay until the very end means more than you probably realize. If these reflections connected with your own experience and you would like to continue exploring moments like this together, subscribing helps support this work in ways that truly matter. I would also love to hear what this past week has felt like for you. Have you already noticed the pressure building? Do you belong to one of the 3 signs we discussed? Have you experienced a realization that seems impossible to explain? Share your experience below, because every story helps us understand these collective cycles more deeply. Take gentle care of yourself over the next few days, and I look forward to meeting you again in the next journey we explore together.